Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers. We are here to preview Purdue versus Texas A&M. Saturday, December 14th. It is a noon tip on CBS. It is the Indy Classic, so taking place at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, downtown Indy. Looking forward to it. Should be a good matchup between two good teams that have some deficiencies, but also have some very good qualities about them. Kraig, I'll throw it to you. Just kind of your overall thoughts heading into this game and on Texas A&M.
I think it presents another unique challenge that Purdue is going to face, where their strength is one of the areas that we have concerns about Purdue in. It's different than some of the other teams that Purdue's played so far that we thought matched up really well in terms of advantage compared to disadvantage standpoint. But nonetheless, it's just yet another one of like, can Purdue beat this type of team? So I think Painter's done a really good job in terms of setting this schedule up and getting these type of teams on the schedule. But just to kind of overview Texas A&M, they're 8-2 on the year, 2-1 in quad one games. Interestingly enough, their win over Creighton is not a quad one; that's a quad two. Just because of where Creighton currently sits. But they're ranked number 17th in the AP poll right now, number 32 in the net, 23 in KenPom. Played the 28th strength of schedule on the year per KenPom. So a team that's played against some high-quality teams, unlike maybe a few of the others that Purdue was either their first or second real high-quality matchup. They get it done on the defensive end. On KenPom, number 10 defensively, number 1 in the country in terms of offensive rebounding, both by Sports Reference and then percentage of offensive rebounds collected. So a team that really, for Purdue, I think this matchup comes down to, can they match the physicality that Texas A&M plays with, and can they at least hold serve to a degree on the glass?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later because that'll be obviously one of the key points within the game. I'm looking back and just quickly flipping through KenPom as we talked, as it just popped in my head. Texas A&M, it's not enough to say that they're just the best offensive rebounding team in the country. They are rebounding 43.3% of their misses, so almost 50% of their misses. I flipped through. The last team that would have a higher offensive rebounding percentage was Minnesota in 2013. Like, this Texas A&M team rebounds the ball on the offensive glass specifically at an absolutely just insane rate. And Purdue has not been great rebounding the ball. Now it is a little funny because like Texas A&M isn't a great defensive rebounding team. They're fine. They're not like spectacular, but
Right.
we'll talk a little bit more in depth because there's some things that stood out within that. But yeah, this is a team that is old. They returned a lot of minutes. They returned 70% of their minutes from last year. In a year that they went, they made the second round of the NCAA tournament. They took Houston to overtime. They very easily could have made a Sweet 16 with basically this entire roster from last year. One or two kind of pieces leave, one or two players come in, but very old, very experienced, very athletic. Going to be a very good test for Purdue. So I don't know if we kind of want to just jump straight into the players and then go back to some of the key points at the end.
For sure, let's do it. So looking at, obviously, when you talk Texas A&M, you've just kind of got to start with Wade Taylor the fourth, averaging 16.1 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. But he's the engine that kind of makes this team go offensively. Not like the defensive specialists on this team, but they have like 8 other guys that do that at a really high level. He's the one guy on this team that can really get hot from outside. Shooting right now from a 3-point percentage standpoint at about 35%, but he can be kind of streaky. And when he gets hot, he'll take them from super deep. Does a really nice job just getting into the paint, being shifty. Easily probably the highest creator for others, talking about that 4.5 assists per game. To me, one of the biggest challenges of this game will be how well do we do keeping Texas A&M guards and wings out of the paint in general, but especially Wade Taylor.
Yeah, and that's where this offense starts is Wade Taylor. They're a top 50 offense. We talked about it before recording this, that like they don't shoot the ball well. They win the possession battle, they get fouls. The one guy that consistently can just like be the dude that goes and gets shots and makes tough ones is Wade Taylor. Now he's taken another leap kind of in that facilitating, getting back to what he did a little bit earlier in his career. He's the guy, like, right. I think a lot of Purdue fans expect somebody random to go off against Purdue most games. It's just, I feel like, kind of the thought process. Wade Taylor isn't like a random dude, but he is the guy that, like, 35% from three, he probably has one of the tougher shot diets in probably the country. Some of it is just the freedom that they're allowed to play with. Some of it is that, like, they don't always create a ton of good looks. It's just kind of like, hey, go ahead and shoot that, get multiple looks, and figure it out from there. But yeah, you nailed it, right? Like, he can get downhill now. I think he's a better probably shooter than he is inside finisher. He's only, like, was he listed 6 foot or 6'1"? But pretty quick, can shoot from anywhere. Purdue has to know where he is at all times, like in the half court, but also when the ball, like when Texas A&M shoots, they have to know where he is from there too. He's oftentimes the only one that doesn't crash the glass for the offensive glass. And so what will happen is offensive rebound, kick out to Wade Taylor, who's wide open. So Purdue has to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, and kind of in the backcourt with Taylor, just jumping off of that is Zurich Phelps averaging 13 points a game, 3.8 rebounds, 2.6 assists. I'm going to kind of let you talk about Phelps a little bit more because you've seen him play 4 games. I rewatched a game right before this, and the game I watched, he was terrible in that specific game, but a super athletic, really elite defender. I think from a steals standpoint on this team, he leads the team in steals with 2.2 steals per game. Not necessarily a shooter, but I was shocked actually because I did the stats page that I put together after watching the Texas A&M Rutgers game, and I was like, really? He's the second leading scorer on this team. So I'm gonna throw it to you because you got to see him play a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, he is a highly inefficient player. He is 40% from 2. He is 21% from 3. He is 64% from the free throw line. Higher turnover rate than assist rate. With that said, with Texas A&M's, right, this all comes back to, like, Texas A&M can live being inefficient per shot because they're going to get 2 or 3 cracks per trip down the floor. And so he is shifty. He wants to get downhill. He's best at using his athleticism to kind of get in the paint. He wants to get all the way to the rim, and he does a very good job. He is probably, I don't like, he's definitely has, like, probably the quickest hands, and he's the most perimeter oriented defensive player I think that they have in terms of, I would expect him to take Braden Smith. They do switch a lot, so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter too much, but he's a guy you don't want him to get hot because he randomly can do it, but he is a guy that, like, if you're picking between Taylor or Phelps shooting, you live with Phelps until kind of proven otherwise and make that happen. He is the secondary creator, though. He can get downhill. He does facilitate for others. He can be loose with the ball a bit, but again, very, very good defensive player. And that's where the strong side is for him, is their strong suit is the defensive side. But I mean, he's 6'4", 190 athletic. Like, it's not like it's unfathomable to see him just start getting downhill against these Purdue guards.
Yeah, I think 100%. And, we talked offline before we came on. I felt like I wrote down the same notes for a lot of these guards and wings outside of Wade Taylor. And I'm actually going to jump to a player who hasn't started a game yet for them next, that actually, from a backcourt standpoint, to me was the second most impressive in Manny Obaseka, averaging 7.3 points a game, 2.1 rebounds a game, 1 assist per game. Another guy that's listed at 6'4", but extremely athletic, really good from a defensive standpoint. He had some extremely acrobatic finishes in that game around the rim, really wants to hunt the paint and hunt the rim. I thought in that particular game, he did a decent job creating only 1 assist per game, though. I think just another really versatile perimeter defender that wants to get downhill.
Yeah, and he feels a lot like a glue guy type to me, and maybe A&M is kind of just made up of a bunch of them, but not a shooter at all. He is 2 for 20 on shots outside of the paint on the season. Obviously that is not a good percentage. 50% at the rim. That's where most, like, he's taken 54 shots inside the paint, 20 outside. Like, he's going to get downhill when he shoots. Maybe isn't like a lead facilitator, but has those capabilities. That Texas Tech game, like he was definitely running point guard at times, or at least like would set up the offense to allow Taylor to then get off ball actions, because maybe we didn't quite mention that with Wade Taylor's, like he's going to be on ball a lot. He's going to dribble the ball up and just go. But there's also times where he plays off ball and they run stuff to just get him looks. Yeah, he's just kind of the glue guy to me of like, he can run point a bit. He can play off ball and drive. He's a solid defender, physical, like just, yeah, kind of fits that Texas A&M mold.
I guess where do you want to go next in terms of that guard wing room? There's still 2 or 3 guys to go. Just from what you've seen, I guess who else just jumps out at you?
Jace Carter's probably the other one. And I think he started 6 of the 9 games that he's played so far. Didn't start the last one. But there's Texas A&M is going to play 9 to 10 deep, depending on the game. Multiple guys will play 20 plus minutes. He again fits the mold of like, hey, not a good shooter. He's really athletic and gets downhill. He's 12 of 17 at the rim this year. Every single one of his twos has come at the rim this year. He has not taken any sort of shot in the paint or in the mid-range. It is either a three-pointer or at the rim. He does a very good job of getting to the foul line where he has struggled shooting the ball. He gets a lot of deflections. Like he is very, very, like this team is active defensively, but he's kind of the head of that, where he is just very, very active defensively. If Carter starts, which I don't know if he will or not, if he starts and Phelps doesn't get Braden, then I would assume it's Jace Carter then at that point, and just throw a bunch of size on Braden. Very active, and we'll talk about the defense more in a sec. But him, and then the other guy to briefly mention is CJ Wilcher, transfer from Nebraska. Should be a little bit more familiar with him. He is, aside from Wade Taylor, he's the one guy like you just don't want to like get good looks from 3. I think his 3-point shooting is down just a bit this year, 34.4%, down from basically 40 last year. He has not taken a 2 all year. He has not taken a single 2. He is going to shoot 3s. He is more of a role player, not getting an insane amount of minutes, but when he is in, he is the one guy like Purdue cannot get good looks.
Yeah, and I know in that specific game, the announcers were talking about the fact that Buzz Williams has like tried to push him to shoot the ball more. Like he's got the ultimate green light of they believe he can get back to that 40% shooter. Purdue fans obviously are really familiar with him, having played at Nebraska. It would probably be the most Purdue thing ever if Wilcher would like find his range again and just get super hot from 3 from the outside.
Yep.
Talking about Washington and Garcia next, maybe from a wing standpoint. To me, Washington's a guy listed at 6'7". But man, I thought he was really impressive defensively in terms of being able to be extremely versatile and guard some forwards, but also switch out and guard some guards that are a little bit smaller and shiftier and stay with them. I was just really impressed with him. Not a big time scorer, 5.8 points a game for Washington, 5.4 points a game for Garcia. Again, long, athletic, good defenders. I was just really impressed with that side of the ball for Washington.
I think he's probably the best overall defender for this team, in my opinion. And like the Texas Tech game, they have Elijah Hawkins, the 5'11" transfer point guard from Minnesota last year. There was times where he was on him. There was times where he was guarding bigs. Like there is a real scenario where at points he guards TKR and at other points he guards Braden Smith. Just kind of the versatility that he has gives him good rim protection as this athletic guy. Gets to the foul line a ton. Now, the thing with him is he's been a good free throw shooter throughout his career. 75% on his career, basically 150 attempts through 3 seasons. He's one of the few guys that like you don't want to necessarily just send to the line. There's some guys you can live with and kind of just be like, all right, he maybe will go 1 of 2. He is not one of those guys. And I was also really impressed. Like just such a versatile defender. I don't know if Purdue has played as versatile a defender as him yet. Maybe there's been better ones like Ace Baldwin or Nick Kern, but like Solomon legitimately can guard 1 through 5.
He just jumped off the page on that end for me. And then with Garcia, I thought also just a guy, he had just an absolutely monstrous dunk that he looked like he'd jump out of the gym in that Rutgers game. And if he's Not necessarily a super shifty guy or anything like that, but if he's got a straight line drive, if he can get out in transition a little bit, kind of a high flyer from just a pure athleticism standpoint. I guess anything else you have on him?
He's now the percentage is down a bit this year. He is a really, really good offensive rebounder. Like he is one of the guys that it stands out. This year he's down to 10% basically offensive rebounding percentage, which means that out of every when he's on the floor, he rebounds himself 10% of Texas A&M misses, not as a team, just him. That's down the last 2 years. He was top 25 in both with about roughly 15% from both. He's maybe not the best this year, right? Henry Coleman, or we'll talk about Coleman in a sec, but Washington is another dude that it stands out. But yeah, super athletic, like really athletic, and he's going to crash the glass.
Yeah, and they called him. Is he from the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico?
He is from Dominican Republic.
Yeah, because they said on the team they call him the Dominican Dennis Rodman. And just in terms of defense and rebounding, and doesn't really care about anything else outside of that. Just wants to excel in those two areas, and obviously does that at an extremely high level. Purdue's going to have to put a body on him anytime a shot goes up to make sure they keep him off the glass. Kind of switch into the two, I guess, bigs. I had no idea when I was watching that game that Coleman is only listed at 6'7". He looks bigger than that. He plays bigger than that in my mind. But a real athletic big man, if we're calling 6'7" big. Another guy that I thought he blocked quite a few shots in that game. And I think on the year, just looking across, is he at what? My numbers are off. That can't be right.
Do you want me to say what he has on the year?
Yeah.
He has no blocks.
I swore he had a block in that game. I guess it must have been Washington I was looking at.
There's been a few where I've seen a few throughout the year, not just him, but where it's that's a blocker, a steal. Brooks Barnharzer, this is very, very random. The one game I watched, he had 2 steals and a block. He was not credited for anything. So there is some of that just happens.
Fair enough. 10.5 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, 0.4 assists. He's second on the team in rebounding behind Garcia. A guy that I think TKR should be able to go at some, just because it's not a guy that's necessarily going to have a size advantage on him, but he's also extremely athletic in the way that he defends and walls up.
Yeah, and I think I do, because he's what I'm looking at, he's 6'8", 250. He does have good size to him. Kind of like Pharrell Payne, who we'll talk about more in a sec, but it feels like if you can face him up a bit, especially because A&M will trap the post. They're going to probably send 2 guys. If TKR can get those little 10, 12-foot face-ups, that's kind of, I think, how he should go at him. But I don't have anything really to add. Really good offensive rebounder, athletic, not going to shoot, obviously, at all, but just a guy that, does his work as a big man.
Yeah. And then finish up with Pharrell Payne, a guy that a lot of Purdue fans, again, ought to be familiar with, a guy who transferred from Minnesota at one point, averaging 6.3 points, 4.1 rebounds a game. We kind of know who he is. He's a bruiser down low at 6'9". Will play super athletic and super physical, averaging just about a block a game on the year. Not a good shooter at all. Draws a decent amount of fouls, but shooting 46% on the year. If you foul Pharrell Payne, it is not a bad foul.
He's shot under 50% all 3 years of his collegiate career, which is just tough to do if you're a big man. Yeah, that's tough to overcome. He's probably he's a really, really good rim protector. He showed it at Minnesota the past 2 years. He's taken that probably even a little bit more of a step this year with that. Physical, gonna foul a lot, draws a lot of fouls. Him and Coleman both really, really good on the offensive glass this year. Payne's rebounding about 14% of misses. Coleman's rebounding about 16%. They don't really share the floor, so you don't really have to worry about both of them. But at all times, they're going to have a big dude that can maybe post up. I think Payne gets a few more post touches than Coleman, where Coleman is a little bit more on the glass and cutting and things like that. But very similar builds, and going to do a lot of the similar things.
Yeah, and we've kind of mentioned now on several guys that will draw fouls, whether they're wings or guards or whether they're big men, at a pretty high clip. Texas A&M ranks 21st in free throw attempts per game per Sports Reference, per KenPom 29th in percentage of points scored from free throws. but they're not necessarily a good free throw shooting team. They're under 70% from the line on the year from a free throw standpoint, but they get there a lot.
Yeah, Purdue's going to have to stay out of foul trouble. TKR specifically is going to have to stay out of foul trouble. This is a game where him at the 5, it matches up well in terms of size and things like that. He just cannot pick up a cheap foul. He can't afford to.
Okay. Any other players we need to talk about? Are you ready to kind of move into the actual matchup and maybe what Purdue can do or needs to do, or how this team might try to defend Purdue specifically?
Yeah, let's move on to some of the big picture things.
All right. So I guess from your standpoint, just you've watched them a little bit more than me. How do you think Texas A&M will go about trying to defend this Purdue team?
So they're pretty versatile in terms of how they defend. They can be very aggressive if they want. I've also seen games where they're not like ultra aggressive. And so what I mean by that is in pick and roll coverage, sometimes they will hedge. Specifically, from what I've seen, especially if it is those sideline, side pick and rolls where they're going to ice, they're going to force Braden Smith to the sideline. They'll kind of hedge those. There's other times where they'll be at the level where it's not like hedging out, but they're just kind of there, and then dropping back a bit. Like if I were to guess, just based on film, from like if they watched any Purdue film against Penn State or anything, you probably go with high hedge and just live with it from there. But the thing that stands out, like Penn State, right, is all up in your grill always 100% of the time, which quietly, like, because I've seen some comments since, like, Braden Smith did not have a good game. Braden Smith turnovers weren't necessarily like a huge issue in that game quietly. A lot of like Purdue was getting to looks, but then like Fletcher Lawyer would make a dumb pass. TKR got ripped like 5 times going up with the ball. That was a side tangent right there. But Braden Smith, like, he's going to have to be able to handle the ball. The thing that I think stands out, though, about this A&M defense is that they have quick and high hands everywhere. If Braden Smith is coming off a screen, they are going to have high hands. And so, yes, maybe they aren't going to basically trap him, but they're going to have hands up. And so now Braden Smith's going to have to get creative if he's going to move the ball from there. They'll switch a lot of off-ball stuff. They have a 1-2-2 full court press that can be a jump trap at some times. They're going to double the post. So, like, their pressure, quote unquote, comes from just being active and having length everywhere, not necessarily of I'm going to be inside your shirt for 40 minutes. But they can, if needed, go to that. It's just not their identity, I don't think.
Yeah, he'll throw a little bit of everything out there. I mean, threw some zone out in that Rutgers game also. It seemed like a lot of times the full court press is really just more to like slow the offensive from initiating into what they want to do in terms of their sets and those types of things. But I was a little bit surprised, just really kind of going through the numbers, that their turnover percentage force wasn't higher and that their steal percentage wasn't higher relative to some other teams that we've looked at this year. But they just do a really good job, in my mind, of not giving good looks, of forcing you into bad shots. From my standpoint, it's going to be really interesting to see how Purdue handles their length and physicality, both out on the perimeter and down low, from both standpoints offensively. Is there anything particularly that you can look at and say this is how Purdue could attack Texas A&M?
There's 2 things. One, regardless of what coverage, well, I guess 3 things, because TKR post-ups is just kind of like a default for if they double, kickouts. If not, TKR go to work. That's just kind of, I think, a staple for every game at this point. But beyond that, there's 2 things. Regardless of what coverage Texas A&M plays, they are a team that is going to rotate their low man, so the opposite corner, a lot to help protect at the rim. They give up a lot of 3-point attempts. Now, they've done a pretty good job of defending them, but they allow those skip passes. They allow shooters to be open at times. Purdue has, like, that's where they're very similar to Penn State, is Purdue just has to knock down some open shots. Against Penn State, they did not do that. They did not knock down open shots. Obviously, CJ Cox gets hot at the ends, but they're going to have to do that in Indy, not in Mackey. Still will, I would assume, be a pretty large Purdue crowd, but got to knock down shots. And then the other thing is if A&M does play that kind of drop type coverage where the big starts at the level and moves back, Braden Smith has to be aggressive. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be as easy as what he showed in that Maryland game, right? Just given that A&M is going to dig in a lot, they are going to show help and things like that. If that's what they're going to play, though, Braden Smith has to take advantage. He just has to.
Yeah, I'm with you there 100%. On the other end of the court, defensively for Purdue against them, I think it starts and ends really well. I think there's two things. One, right? Number one, these guards want to get downhill and they want to penetrate. If Purdue can do a decent job of keeping their man in front, this Texas A&M offense can really bog down, because you don't watch Texas A&M and say like, man, the stuff they're running is beautiful, right? It's much more, we're going to let our guards create. We're going to let them try to get downhill. Sometimes they will play through their bigs. Did that a few times and just post them up, but that's not necessarily, they're not high level, high skilled back to the basket players. I think I saw them get fouled more than they made shots from that standpoint, but get way more of their points cleaning up the glass from offensive rebound standpoint. So I think number one, we got to keep their guards in front and just not let them get penetration. And in doing so, because they want to go to the free throw line so much, I think one thing Purdue can do really well here is Purdue, by and large, does a nice job of playing defense without fouling. Whereas a lot of teams necessarily, when they get that pressure against them going downhill, will foul a decent amount of time. Purdue's still doing a decent job of playing defense without fouling, but can they keep that man in front? And then number two, have to put a body on somebody. Because this Texas A&M team will rebound from every single position. If you go down the line, you've got like 7.4, 6.2, 6.3, but they're all their guards and wings for the most part, with total rebounds anyway, average close to 4 or up. So you've got to put a body on somebody and limit second chances. Like I said, not a good shooting team. So if Purdue can limit second chances, try to keep them from getting all the way to the rim and not foul, I think they can do some good things. I guess your opinion about Purdue defensively against them?
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of it. They will and then will run a lot of ISOs at times and just kind of let their guys go to work. I think the big thing that I'm going to add before talking a little bit more about the rebounding is that they are willing to go quick. They aren't necessarily like a crazy up tempo run and gun and transition type team, although they will get out and run. But there's times where it's just Wade Taylor will bring up the ball, and now he crosses the half court with 25 seconds, and then he just kind of drives. And now he's getting to a shot at 21 seconds. Not necessarily that they're like pushing and running and gunning, but just that like he can just kind of go and do his thing, and he doesn't always need a screen. So Purdue, and it's not even just him, other guys are in that category as well. Purdue has to just be aware of that, I think, right away, of like, hey, kind of have to be locked in for all 30 seconds. I agree with everything else you said. Turn them into a jump shooting team if you can, and just don't foul. The rebounding, so from what I've seen, for the most part, they usually have one guard kind of get back when a shot goes up, when Texas A&M shoots the ball. They'll generally have one guard get back, usually Wade Taylor. All 4 other guys crash. And the only exception maybe is if the other guard, like whether it's maybe Phelps, will say, if he shoots, maybe he doesn't. But it's also that the wings and bigs are what get on the offensive glass. 2 things that stood out is beyond just like, hey, man, they crash the glass hard, is they do a very good job of knowing where the ball is going to go. Like, if somebody shoots a long jumper on the left wing, they're going to they might have one guy on the left side in case it's a short rebound. They're going to throw 2 on the other side, where it's like, hey, this is more than likely going to be a long bounce to the opposite side. We're going to have 2 guys, 2 super athletic, strong guys right there being willing to just fight for that ball on the opposite side, knowing that that's generally where it's going to go. And I think the other thing is, and you can like watch them do this, is they'll throw the ball to some, like say Wade Taylor in the wing, right? And you can kind of just tell Wade Taylor's going to shoot the ball pretty quick. You just see them time up of like, they like start to go and then he's like, oh, he didn't quite shoot yet. And then they time up exactly when they need to dive as he shoots. So that way it's like, if you turn and are looking to like, oh, I need to box out my guy, he might already be gone. He might already be at the rim in the correct spot on probably the opposite side because they do such a good job of timing it up. And I didn't, most teams you don't expect to have to talk about rebounding this in depth, but it is just crazy how well they are able to crash the glass and rebound the ball on the offensive side. So I think it warrants that discussion because that's like it's going to be a very big thing.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, I think if we're ranking keys to the game, I think that the rebounding battle is probably number one in this game, because like they're not good shooters. So if you just can
Yeah,
limit it and
to
I
one.
don't think there's any way that Purdue wins this rebounding battle. But if Purdue is -5 on the game, I'm going to consider that a win in this particular game.
Yeah, and I have a couple keys and we've basically had on them, but we'll summarize and then get out of here. It's a wild thing that I'm gonna say, but like if Purdue can just keep them under like 40% offensive rebounding percentage, and offensive rebounding percentage, like I said, is out of every miss, what percentage of the offensive rebounds do you get, right? So if there's 10 shots and you offensive rebound at a 40% rate, you're gonna get 4 of those. If you can keep them under 40, which is a wild number, I think you're setting up. Ideally, you want it under 35. I don't think they've had that this year, though. Um, they've had the worst Texas A&M offensive rebounding game was they rebounded 30% of their misses. And for comparison, Purdue, so their worst game was they rebounded 30%. Purdue on the season is rebounding 29.6% of their misses. Keep it under 40, maybe under 35, and that's a good way to get the win. I have a couple other keys. I can just read through them and then I'll throw it to you and we'll
Yeah,
get
go
out of
ahead.
here. Well, this is basically just summarizing the whole video. Knock down threes. Like A&M's going to give up threes. Got to knock them down. They're not quite Nebraska level, but it's closer to that. Like I said, Braden and TKR just have to be dominant if A&M's going to play them single coverage. And then the last thing we just talked about is make A&M a jump shooting team. If Taylor goes crazy, then maybe you adjust, but like you'd rather just live with them shooting jump shots than being at the rim.
100%. And they will go to the rim when you have no expectation they're going to go to the rim. They'll drive into 2-3 guys at times, that stuff that would make Painter just like pull his hair out, and Buzz Williams was over there just clapping like good drive, you know. So they want to attack, assume they're going to get fouled, assume they're going to get some offensive rebounds if they just get it up on the backboard or on the rim. 100%. So always have to be ready for them to attack downhill, always have to be ready to put a body on somebody and do it quickly. This last thing, as I was watching this team, not necessarily the Michigan State teams of the last couple of years that had like Tyson Walker and whatnot, but this really reminded me of like some of the old school Michigan State teams where they were super athletic at almost every position, maybe not the highest skilled shooters, but got that one lead dude from a guard standpoint that can go off and that's super proficient, and then just athleticism everywhere else around. So that's kind of in my head what I equate this team to a little bit for those of you guys that go back a few years on those Michigan State squads. Any big other things that you want to add here, Joe, before we sign off? Oh, wait, what's the line in this game?
Purdue is, I
Do we
think,
have
favored
one?
by 3 per KenPom.
All right. We covering or
72 to
not?
69 was the projection. I think so. I think I like how Purdue can attack this team. I
Mhm.
don't I think Purdue will have some turnovers. I don't expect it to be an insanely high turnover game. Um, and you're just kind of banking on A&M missing jumpers. If A&M gets off on the jumpers, then it's a different story. But I think Purdue wins this by like 6 or so.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just watching this team, like if they can limit offensive rebounds, which I think they can, I just don't know that Texas A&M has enough firepower. I also feel there was a long time Purdue fans like felt like Gamebridge was a curse, but I feel like we've shot the ball really well in that gym in the last few times that we've played there. That this Purdue team is extremely comfortable playing in that building. I think we shoot the ball well, and I think we do just enough from a rebounding standpoint to win this game.
Yep. So should be a good one. Did you have anything else?
Nope.
All right. So 12, it is a noon Eastern tip. CBS, obviously in Cambridge, like we said. So in Indianapolis, should be a good one. And we will be live sometime after the game, shortly after the final buzzer sounds. And so, yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and you'll get notified as soon as we do go live. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you all in the next one.